Hi, this is Pat Fraley, purveyor of dystopian felon violence. And you're watching Altered Geek.
Hello and welcome to Altered Geek Unlimited. I'm your host, Steve Megatron Phillips, and no, nobody's joining me this week. The thing is, well, my son was just born, so I'm going to be MIA for a couple of weeks, so they're going to be pre-recorded shows. So here's a interview with Mike and I with Olivia from the UK.
So the first question is, it seems superhero films have been targeted specifically for a Western audience, as you don't see many films based on any sort of manga. Do you guys know what this is, yeah?
Manga?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
I mean, I agree that that's what's happening. We haven't seen any films based off of anime or manga yet, but I know that they're working on stuff.
Ghost in the Shell is one that they're working on specifically, and they did have a failed Dragon Ball movie a couple of years back.
There's that, and Fox has a draft for Cowboy Bebop sitting around, and Sony is working on Robotech or Macross.
Okay, cool. So do you think that these films will be popular within like a Western country? So say like obviously in the US or the UK, do you think that they'll get a wide audience or?
Yes, I think they will, because I mean the properties that they're going after are the more well-known anime titles, like like Steve said, Ghost in the Shell, Macross, and Cowboy Bebop.
Okay, cool. Right. So next question is, in your opinion, are the superhero films doing the comics justice? If not, how would you yourself keep them true to the story?
I apologize. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, no, that's fine. In your opinion, are the superhero films doing the comics justice? If not, how would you yourself keep them true to the story?
I think you're asking if the comics are the cinematic version of the comics, are they true to the story, or how can they be kept closer to it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man wasn't true at all, but now the Amazing Spider-Man, is a lot more true to the comics. But go on, sorry.
No, I honestly, when it comes to comic book movies, I like the ones that don't adhere to the comic book, because I like seeing new takes on the same characters.
Okay.
I was more of a fan of the Amazing Spider-Man than I was of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, but not because of how he differentiated from the comic or one was closer than the other. It's just different takes on the same character. If I wanted to, for example, if I wanted to read X-Men Days of Future Past, which was a mini series in the comics and obviously a feature film, I would rather read the comic than see it retold. I think that's where a lot of comic book movies get held up, is when they try to straight up do a literal interpretation of a comic book, because then fans have expectations that need to be met, versus taking those characters and giving them a new twist or a new story.
Yeah. Okay.
And for myself, like I don't read a lot of comics. I mean, I used to, and I do here or there, but I find it's easier, especially for like when I'm watching something from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I tend to enjoy the films more because I have no idea what the comics are playing into.
Yeah.
Into it. I know that some of them do tie in, but it doesn't resonate with me. Whereas like I'm more of a DC fan, so whenever something comes up from that, it irks me if it doesn't match the comic, because I'm, like Mike said, I'm expecting something to hit that same note.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys are the first two that have actually said that you're not bothered, but you're more interested in seeing what they can do on it. I've had a lot of people say that they get really irritated with them not keeping to the original story.
I just like seeing something different. If I wanted to see the same old story, I just read the comic all over again.
Yeah.
I'm more of a stickler on keeping the character appearance and personality closer to the comic.
Yeah. Oh, so
But
what?
the story itself, I'm more fluid with. I'd rather see them come up with something new.
Okay. So, you said that you're quite a big fan on DC, and you'd like to see them stick to the characters. How do you feel about Aquaman? Because they've released oh, what's his name? Oh, good.
The guy from
Uh,
Game of Thrones.
Jason
Yeah.
Momoa. Jason
Yeah,
Momoa.
that's it. I can never say his name properly. Sorry. Yeah, they've released him, and obviously, well, I think personally that DC are a lot darker than Marvel, and obviously Aquaman in the comics is very colourful. So, how do you feel about his representation in the film?
You want to go first, Steve?
Yeah. Being that we haven't seen him yet in action, it's kind of hard to judge. Both Mike and I have been kind of bouncing back and forth ever since the initial Batman vs Superman info on Ben Affleck dropped. So we've kind of come to this realization that it's kind of hard to judge them before we see them, and with the vision that DC is going for, they're not colorful, they're not lighthearted. I know that Marvel's starting to go in that kind of dark direction, but Warner Brothers and DC have been kind of in that dark area for a while with the Nolan films. So with them coming up with these new darker interpretations of the characters, with still keeping some of the personality traits and some of the appearance aspects, I think they're going for a more gritty version of Aquaman to kind of make him relevant in today's world. Whereas when most people think of Aquaman, they think about the 70s like Super Friends cartoon when he talks to just fish, and it's, so they're all like, oh, Superman or Aquaman's not all that great because of this, but they're dating themselves back to the 70s. And whereas nowadays he's actually, it goes to the writing and to the, how they use him. And since this will be the first time the first time we'll have seen him in a film at some point, whenever that is, it remains to be seen how well they use him.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what Steve said. I mean, we've only seen a photo. We have no idea how the character, carries himself, or the actor carries the character, or anything like that. And I, for one, have always found, I kind of like with Steve there, I kind of always have found Aquaman to be a joke. But
Yeah.
I mean, the way that they've designed the character, um I don't have anything against it. It makes me want to see what they're going to do with that character, and I think that if they had given me the orange and green spandex that Aquaman is known for, I think there's no way I would have wanted to see that movie.
I think it would have played into that stereotype of him being that 70s version more so than where they kind of broke the mold here.
Okay, cool. So that sort of leads me on to my next question. Well, you've kind of just answered it, really. I was just going to ask, in your opinion, do you think hero films have become a lot darker today, or is it just DC that have become darker?
I don't know if DC's become darker. I think they just hit on something with the Nolan movies. Actually, my personal opinion as far as what happened with the DC movies is I think there was a moment where they thought they might be able to get Christian Bale to play Batman opposite Henry Cavill's Superman. And so with Nolan being an executive producer on Man of Steel, they wanted to keep the same tone or color palette, if you will, as the Batman films. And well, we've all come to see that hasn't worked out. So now they're kind of stuck with this look. But I don't think it's a bad one because it sets them apart from the Marvel movies. If you see a DC trailer, before it gets to like a title card that it's a DC movie versus a Marvel tends to be a little more colorful. Even when they go dark, their characters are still colorful, so that's a Marvel movie. Whenever someone says, I don't like that they're going gritty, I just think if I want to watch a colorful movie, I'm going to watch a colorful superhero movie, I'll watch Marvel. If I want to feel something that's a little more adult and maybe geared towards me and what I like to see in movies, I'm going to watch a DC movie.
Okay, cool. Steve, have you got any?
I kind of agree with that. you can really tell the difference between the two. And for me, the Marvel films are they're just brighter in color anyway. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a staple of Warner Brothers anymore. Anyhow, though, a lot of their stuff is kind of dark.
Look how fast Harry Potter got dark.
Oh no, it
Yeah.
went from bright and colorful to just that same color palette that we're in with the Nolan films and the Batman vs Superman trailer. So that's kind of their thing, and because Harry Potter and the Nolan films worked out so well for them, they're kind of sticking with that. Whereas like Marvel, all their characters have been pretty much shiny, colorful. Despite the series getting darker as it goes along, it's still keeping with that color palette. It's just that the grit has started to show.
The themes are getting darker, but the films aren't getting darker.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay, cool. So in the last 15 years, what superhero film do you believe has stuck to the original storyline and characters the best? Sorry. Like within like comics. Like in reference to comics.
That has stuck with the comics
Yeah.
storyline the best?
I mean, to you guys, like, so it could be anything from like character costume to character representation to
Blade?
storyline or villains or anything.
Does Blade count?
Yeah, Blade counts.
Jeez. I mean, I think. Okay, it's interesting there because there's been here. The problem you run into here is there's so many even in comics there's so many interpretations and reboots of any given character.
Yeah.
Their origins have been rehashed so many times to make them more contemporary and keep them fresh with the changing times. I mean, there's stories where Batman doesn't walk out of, when his parents are murdered. One is that he was at a play, the other one he was seeing the Mask of Zorro. Like, it changes all the time.
It depends on who's telling the story, really.
Yeah, so on one hand, like, you could look at like the Nolan movies as being the closest to an interpretation. Like Batman Begins is probably would be the closest, I think. Batman Returns, or not, sorry, Batman Returns, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight would probably be the closest. I think Rises deviates a little bit too much with the characters.
Well, Dark Knight Rises, though, it pulled from 6 different comics plot lines from Batman that they were made at different times, so it kind of doesn't really fit.
I would even go so far as saying Man of Steel could fit, with the exception of the ending where he kills Zod.
Zod, yeah.
I don't think there's one that truly is, 300. There. That's the closest one.
Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
300 was pretty much shot for shot the comic, so.
Yeah. Okay. What did you guys think when he killed off Zod at the end? Were you disappointed? Were you like, oh my god, why did he kill him? Like, what is going on? Or were you just like, okay, cool, they've done this. What are they going to do next?
I'm not a huge fan of Man of Steel anyhow, but that's because I don't really care for the character of Superman all that much. And I also didn't like the tone of the film itself, like the dark color palette. I liked it with the Nolan films, but I didn't like it with that. Getting back to the actual question, I didn't care one way or the other, because in one regard, they would have, what was he going to do with him? And he was so new to being a hero, because he was kind of thrust into that position because Zod came hunting him down, knowing that he was there. So it was pretty much, do I let this guy continue to terrorize people and let him live, or do I kill him? Just end it.
Yeah.
And he's so raw of a hero at this point that he's not actually Superman. He's just the Man of Steel at this point. He's not. There's no real code to tell him how he should operate yet. So it's in that essence, I feel that he did what was right in that situation.
Yeah.
But a lot of fans have gotten backlash because, Superman doesn't kill, even though in recent years in the comics he does.
Yeah, I got a lot of angry emails actually from comic fans saying that they were really annoyed that he
I
killed him.
mean, in the Injustice Gods comics, Superman killed the Joker because he killed Lois Lane,
Yeah,
who was pregnant with his child. So like, and then that just set him on a worldwide cleansing of the earth of people that were bad. So I mean, it depends on the interpretation, but anymore it seems like Superman is willing to do what's necessary to prevent a further evil.
okay, cool. Mark, have you got any take on it?
Um, yeah, I agree with what Steve was saying for the most part. I mean, that's one of the things. Like, I mean, they didn't call the movie Superman; they called it Man of Steel, and that's one of the things
Yeah,
that kind of kept coming back to in arguments I would have with people, saying that they don't like the ending of the movie, and it wouldn't even just be the whole like, him killing Zod. It would be um, the all the destruction in the last quarter of the movie. Just everyone being like, "That's not Superman. He would have done this and that and the other thing." And I'm like, he's not Superman. He's he's Clark Kent. He's still Clark Kent. He doesn't know what he's
yeah,
doing. He's just doing what he can to make it stop the best way he knows how. He doesn't have the superhero code yet. No one's beaten it into him yet. That's what Batman versus Superman's for. Um, I so I wasn't like, was I surprised that they went there? Yeah. Was I like offended by it? No, because I also agree with Steve. I don't find Superman to be that interesting of a character, but I did enjoy Man of Steel. Um, but I don't know, I wonder if people were more mad because it was Zod that he killed.
yeah,
I think it could be that.
yeah.
Because
I
I
got
think
a lot of angry emails about it, and they were just up. They like really, they were going on for a good like 5 paragraphs of why they were pissed off about it. So
I just wonder if it was because it was Zod. Like if it had been any other, like if it had been like Bizarro Superman
yeah.
or Metallo, would people be that crazy? Like, I don't know. And that just popped into my head. That's actually interesting.
Um, okay, so next question. Do you think it appeal to a more niche audience or superhero fans of the comics if the film companies were to base films on unheard of superhero comic characters or like villains or so like Cable, Solomon Grande, Hobgoblin, and stuff like that?
Uh, I yes. And I think that just comes from. I mean, you can look at like the original Blade. That's kind of was an unknown property and came out of nowhere, and it didn't. It's a niche superhero movie. Yeah, it got 3 movies, and each one made a little more than the last one,
Yeah,
but it never really took off, like a Spider-Man does or like a Batman did. Um, and then you have, uh, oh, I had another one. I don't know, Steve.
Um, I think it kind of helps that they or I think it would help if they went to more obscure characters, only because we've seen a lot of these characters beaten to death over the last 20 years, some of them longer than that.
yeah,
But take for instance, how many reboots of Spider-Man we've had. This will be the third time coming that
yeah,
Marvel now has control of, and we've had how many Batmans in the last 15, 20 years, and uh, and even X-Men now at this point, or Fantastic Four. I mean, they've been rebooted at least 2, 3 times in the last 20 years. It's I think people have already gotten the gist of the story with some of these characters. I think it would help to bring in more obscurity and more uh, diverse characters that people are familiar with, but haven't seen on the big screen yet. Or even if they're not on the big screen, like in some instances, I think having them come to TV is a better instance in some characters' instances. But uh, either way, there's some that should be brought to the front line and put some of these other ones to the back burner for a while.
yeah.
Punisher. That was the other one I was
That's
thinking
it.
of.
Yeah,
Punisher, like that. I mean, we've had 3 movies if you count the what was it, the 80s or something like that.
yeah,
But the 2 most recent ones, they weren't the box office successes that other superhero movies have been, and that he's like a niche character.
Well,
Um,
Ghost Rider too. I mean,
Yeah, Ghost Rider. That's another one. They've tried that, and I think the interesting outlier here is Ant-Man. We have yet to see how that's going to do, but
Yeah.
the precedent here is Guardians of the Galaxy, which is like nobody but like the diehards knew who they were, and that was one of the most successful movies of last year. But that is the Marvel branding, and
Yeah.
in my opinion, the Marvel Studios logo has become like the same thing as the Pixar logo. You see that Pixar logo with the lamp and you know what you're getting. You see the
Mm.
Marvel Studios logo, you know what you're getting. Um, I think people just, they come out to see that movie. But I think there's a way to include niche characters, whether they start out as like a character inside of a movie and get their own, or like we saw Daredevil, who's a niche character. He moved down to, Netflix and they knocked the ball out of the park with that one. So,
Yeah. See, I think the TV program of Daredevil is better than the actual film.
oh, yes.
So
Yes,
that
yes.
is that's
there's
my
more time to flesh it out.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Right. Okay. So back to Batman versus Superman. Do you think that it was just based on do you think it was based, sorry, to get a reasonable profit out of it? Or do you think they actually want to give something to the fans that they haven't seen before?
I think
Like,
it's
obviously,
both.
they're going to make a profit out of it anyway, but I mean, do you think their idea was for the fans and they want to, like, show the fans something that they haven't seen before? Or was it just for profit?
I think it's for both. Obviously, all these films are made for profit, or they wouldn't keep making more superhero films. Um, I mean, just look how many have come out since. I mean, really, we only had Superman or Batman that were worth anything before the late '90s when they started coming out with like the X-Men films and Spider-Man, and then it just kind of it blew up from there. So I mean, yes, I think the profit margin does come into play, but I also think that um, they try and give the fans, because comic fans are very rabid in the sense that we like to see more of it, even though we complain as much as we do.
Yeah.
Um, there's still not the inkling that we won't go see the film, because we will, and they know that, and that's why they keep making more of them. The only thing that's kind of bad about that is they start running out of ideas and kind of backpedaling in some areas, where they start stealing stuff from the comics, and then like Batman vs Superman, for instance, it's the Dark Knight Returns mixed in there with something else, with part of their original idea. It's just how well they pull it off. I mean, I obviously, with the trailer, I'm enthused now after seeing the trailer. So, despite all the random cameos that may show up, but yeah, I think that's my answer anyway.
Okay.
I also think it's for both. Again, every studio is profit driven. You'd have to be crazy not to be, and I think I think it's for the fans, because I think Zack Snyder tries to make movies that at least his fans want to see, and I think he has. I thought he was a good choice for Man of Steel, because I think he can show action better than most other directors can. But I think it's being made just, for the fans and for a wider audience as well. Like, I don't know why you can't be both. I've always hated the term like sellout. Just because you make money off of something, doing something that
Yeah.
you love isn't a bad thing. I think people just get mad when people are making money doing something that they love. So,
I
Okay.
agree.
Um, Batman and Superman obviously is not based on a comic. So, what comic book conventions or what conventions of other superhero films would you like to see laced within this film?
what do you mean Batman versus Superman is not based on comics?
Like the story as a whole.
Well, part of it
It's gonna
is
guess
actually
it's yeah. Go on. Sorry.
part of it is actually based out of The Dark Knight Returns, though, because the tail end of that comic is the government in that one anyway is where the government's telling Superman to put an end to Batman making a riot in Gotham City, and so the two of them duke it out in the middle of this a deserted street, and Batman's in his plated armor pummeling Superman, and it's basically a grudge match where Batman outsmarts Superman and takes him down with Kryptonite at the help of Green Arrow, Oliver Queen, and that particular fight and like the armor and all that kind of stuff, they kind of recreated it in the trailer, and they're going to use part of that elements in Batman vs Superman, but I think they're going to flip it on their head. I think this is going to be, Batman going after Superman because he's making the riot, so it's going to flip that element, but it's still going to be a lot of it played out of that comic.
Okay. Mike?
Steve and I have talked a lot about this over the last 2 weeks. So I agree with what he's saying, that a lot of it is going to come out of a comic. If anything, the one thing that's going to differ heavily from any comic that I've seen or interpretation of Superman is that he's going to be, for at least a certain portion of the film, he's going to be posed as the villain until the actual villain reveals itself. And I think that's going to be what's interesting about it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Obviously, with the casting of Ben Affleck as Batman, and his not recent, but his past performance in Daredevil, how do you feel about his casting?
This is a funny one for us. The costume, we actually predicted it before they ever showed an ounce of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the funny thing is we have this podcast that we run, Altered Geek Unlimited, and upon its initial inception, we came across the news of it, the same night we started it, Ben Affleck being cast as Batman, and we kind of gave our why, yes, and no of him, being cast, and then we actually came up with what we thought would be the ultimate bat suit, and when they revealed it, we just started laughing because it was exactly what we predicted.
Oh, right, interesting.
Yeah,
So,
with his casting, we kind of went through the whole with every stage of grief there was, and it all happened like in real time while we were recording the podcast. It was quite interesting because I think like 5 minutes after we hit record, the announcement that Affleck had been cast as Batman came across our Twitter feeds, and we broke into our record talking about why it was like a bad idea, and of course we ran through all the jokes and everything, and then we stumbled into, okay, well, he's done, Argo and some other high profile things, and he's come a long way since then, and then it just then by the end of the episode we had already reached acceptance. It was
right.
quite interesting.
See, again, I've got a lot of angry emails saying that they don't think he's going to be up to the
Well, don't get me wrong. I wanted to see Bale. I mean, the more I read about the Batman that they wanted to put on screen and stuff, I was kind of like, why can't this be Bale's Batman? But I still haven't really come to terms with. Like, I'm fine with Affleck being him. The hardcore geek side of me just wish it was still Bale. But
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with it because, like I said, I'm all for seeing new interpretations of things. I don't need to be stuck with the same guy playing the same role for forever.
And to me, I haven't liked. I mean, I did like the battle-ish armor of the Nolan films, but to me, this is the first Batsuit I've actually 100% liked.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a lot of response about the Batsuit actually, and they said that they really liked it. But obviously, I think people are just more worried about the character underneath it. So,
I think those people need to watch Ben Affleck's more recent films.
Yeah,
I did say that to them.
He's more versatile now, whereas before he was kind of a joke in everything he did.
Yeah, definitely.
They definitely need to get over themselves. I mean, I can watch Affleck and Argo, and I watched like a couple.
He did Gone Girl too, and that was pretty intense.
Yeah, that was really intense.
There were two movies that he did like really close together, and I watched both of them. I know one was Argo and something else, and I watched them. I sat down and watched them all the way through, and I was like, okay, fine, we're done. We've got our next Batman. Let's move on with next concept here.
Yeah.
And when the Daredevil TV show came out, I marathoned that like most everybody else did, and then I was like, you know what? I want to subject myself to the Daredevil from 2003. I made it about 30 minutes into it, and I was like, this is horrible. And it wasn't necessarily like Affleck that was bad,
It
except
was just the writing.
it was
Yeah,
that.
it was just in general, I think.
But it also showed like how far superhero movies and Affleck has come, like in 12 years.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I think those people just need to get over themselves.
I'll tell them. So, with Batman versus Superman, who would you choose? Obviously, if it wasn't Bale and if it wasn't Affleck, who would you choose to be Batman? Like, who personally would you think would take on the role really well? Or do you think it would still be Bale or Affleck would be interesting?
If it couldn't be either one of them, I would go with the guy that was supposed to play Batman in the original Justice League movie from like 2005, which was Armie Hammer.
Oh, right, okay. You both agree on that then?
Yep.
Okay, cool. That was short. What are your thoughts and opinions on Marvel not bringing Andrew Garfield back to the Amazing Spider-Man?
I'm bummed because I liked Garfield as Peter Parker. And
Yeah.
I liked I liked the first Amazing Spider-Man. The second Amazing Spider-Man it was a mess.
Yeah.
There's no saving that one. But I liked Andrew Garfield. I think I was more bummed about him not coming back for the simple fact of now he can be, the Spider-Man that everyone wants him to be, because we all know that Marvel has Spider-Man scripts written already that they can just make. They've been waiting for this moment since they started the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Mm.
I just feel bad that he's not going to be a part of that
Because he's too old.
It's not even that. I think it's just they don't want the baggage that they don't want to include Amazing Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's what happens if you have the same actor play the same role.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad to see him go because I think even though he's like, 30 something, he still looks pretty young.
He looks younger than I do.
I think he's like 26, 27. I don't think he's quite that old.
He's early 30.
But yeah, I mean, I think he was an excellent Spider-Man. I don't know about the Peter Parker part because he was kind of a hipster instead of the dorky nerd that was being left alone. I think Tobey Maguire fit a better Peter Parker, but I think that Andrew Garfield was a better Spider-Man.
See, I think for me, I didn't care for Tobey's interpretation because I think he went too far to the nerd side of it.
He did. I think there needed to be a balance between the two, though.
I never felt him being like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man never came off as smart, where I got the smart Peter Parker out of Garfield's.
Well, he had to make his own web shooters. The other one had him stuck in his wrist.
And then so there's that. But what it really comes down to is when it comes to Spider-Man, I'm an Ultimate Spider-Man fan. And that was what Garfield brought for me, was Ultimate Spider-Man to the big screen. And so I was used to him being the more outgoing, like he knows he's Spider-Man, so he's okay with himself, not like I have to have like a secret identity, like when people can see that I'm just a nerd.
Yeah.
So I just appreciated it. I didn't get the whole. I mean, I can see how people were, calling out the hipster thing and stuff like that, but whatever. That's just like that's keeping the character like present,
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, obviously there's rumors about who is going to be the new Spider-Man, and just out of interest, who would you guys like to see as the new Spider-Man if you could pick anyone?
Andrew Garfield.
What, you'd still remain Andrew Garfield, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, they could just not, I mean, they can just say that those movies don't, aren't the same thing. They could even give it like wouldn't even have to call it like Amazing Spider-Man 3. They could just call it Spectacular Spider-Man or Ultimate Spider-Man. Just have it be a new thing. Um,
Not Spider-Man: The Next Avenger. No, I kind of agree. I think I'd rather see Andrew Garfield continue it because I don't think he did anything wrong. I think that second film is just written so bad that it bombed that entire franchise at Sony.
but the rumor is, how do you say his name, Steve?
Asa Butterfield.
I'm okay with that too.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
So
Interesting.
I've always liked see the ultimate universe of characters. They've always skewed a little younger. And so I've liked the younger, like in high school, Peter Parker, because I've kind of found him to be a little more relatable than the 30 something working for, a newspaper. And then the same thing kind of goes for like the new Fantastic Four. I was a big fan of Ultimate Fantastic Four, and those characters were all younger, like in their teens, and doing the kind of stuff that they do. And I always found that more interesting than adults
Working out of the Baxter Building.
well, that and like adults having those same things and having adult type problems to deal with on top of being adventurers is like that's not fun to me. I'd rather see kids get into really intelligent kids get into mischief and have to get out of it. So
Okay, cool.
Just don't be surprised if Agent Coulson comes in as the principal of Spider-Man.
that would be fantastic.
That'd be awesome, actually.
Um, what is your take on the Fantastic Four? Because obviously they've casted Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, and obviously he's a black actor. So how do you guys feel about this?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I honestly don't care like on that aspect because this is like a completely off the wall different interpretation of Fantastic Four. Different than the cosmic rays and the previous iteration. So I mean I think it's good to separate themselves and kind of do something different from time to time. Some characters it works with changing them, and then some of them it doesn't. But this I don't think it's a big deal. I'm good with it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. One of my favorite reactions when that was cast and people were blowing up around the internet, like that's dumb. He's not Johnny Storm's white and all this other stuff. One of my favorite tweets was the guy's on fire. You can't tell what color his skin is.
That is actually good.
So as long as he's just as cocky or more cocky than Chris Evans was,
yeah, that's fine.
And from what I've seen of him in Friday Night Lights, he can do it.
Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts on reboots of superhero films? I know we've sort of covered this, but how do you feel about them? Like, when a new one comes out, are you interested to go and see it? Or are you just like, oh, for God's sake, like another one?
Are we talking about reboots in general?
Yeah, like of any films really. I mean, obviously it happens within superhero films, but any films that you can think of.
I'm a fan of reboots for two reasons. One, because the original will probably get some amazing Blu-ray release that it probably never would have seen if the movie hadn't been rebooted. So that's fantastic. If you're a fan of the original one, you get an updated, cleaned up print, brand new transfer, all the special features, bells and whistles, whatever. And the other thing is, I like seeing like a new take on something. I had a lot of fun. Like I liked the original RoboCop. I had a lot of fun with the new one. I can't really think of a reboot that I didn't not like because I kind of try to look at it like, I don't really try to compare it to the original one. Just kind of take it as like, what's this guy going to do different? What's this guy going to tell me differently that the other guy didn't tell me? So as long as it's not the exact same thing again, which I think I think Amazing Spider-Man was a little bit guilty of, but they tried to put a different spin on Peter's parents, which was at least mildly interesting.
Okay.
I'm somewhat of a fan of reboots. I think in some instances it helps revitalize a franchise that may have otherwise choked itself to death. But at the same time, I don't want to see a reboot for the purpose of them creating a cinematic universe to try and copy Marvel.
There you go.
Point in case would be Ghostbusters, Transformers, because they keep making sequels and reboots of them. And I don't care if they change the characters. Like, for instance, everybody's pissing and moaning about Ghostbusters being an all-female cast and then them making another male cast Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I could care less who's cast in it. It's just...
It better be funny.
I don't... What's that?
It better be funny. That's all that matters.
Yeah, it better be good, for one, and two, because they never live up to the expectation of the original.
Yeah.
That's one thing that always happens, is there's a comparison. The other thing with that is I don't want to see a franchise like Back to the Future get remade.
Yeah.
Because it's so iconic. I mean, yeah, it's dated. It's badly dated. But I don't want to see it get replaced either. Whereas like RoboCop, yeah, it works in today's age redoing it because it just looks so like that, Total Recall, not necessarily good films, like either set, but it's a nice new interpretation of it. So, I mean, it kind of works in some instances and some it doesn't.
I want to see a remake of Escape from New York. That's what I want. Anyways.
What would you want to see, Steve? If you could remake any film, what would you want to see?
You know, I don't know, because I like all the original films that I've seen. Like, they have their place in my nostalgia bank, and I really don't want to see them get ruined.
Ooh, I have another one. Flight of the Navigator.
Again, two movies I've never heard of. But yeah, I mean, I can't find anything that I'd like to see rebooted, really.
Okay. What was I gonna? Oh, right. Since X-Men 2000, there's been an average of 6 superhero films every year, which I find pretty cool. Do you think this is making the experience for the audience less unique? And if you do, why?
Personally, I don't. Because they're not being made by like the same studio, and they all have a different vision. I mean, we talked about this at the beginning, but like the difference between a Marvel film and a DC film, like their tones are different. So I think, I mean, as long as they're not all like trying to copy each other, they're trying to all do their own thing. I think you're okay. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, you have so many animated movies every year. Do you think that really ruins all the animated movies? I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of have to piggyback on that.
Okay. Why do you think there's been such a big growth in the superhero genre? Sorry.
I think it's turned into a cash cow just because it's each success that they have causes these studios to say, what can we do next? What can we pluck from obscurity? Who do we think is popular enough, to create a film universe with? And we got all those X-Men films, we got Spider-Man films, and then more Batman films and so on. And Iron Man was really the first. I would say Iron Man was really the first one to kind of pop that bubble, as it were, and cause everybody to really look seriously at a superhero film. Because I think around the same time we had that bomb of Spider-Man 3.
Yes, that was the year earlier.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And Iron Man, I think, was the first film that everybody started looking at superhero films serious and saying, hey, these can be good. And then it kind of just went through a whirlwind, and now every year we're getting more and more superhero films. whether it be, more Captain America or Avengers or, Iron Man or Batman, whatever. They're all coming out around the same time, and you're seeing at least. I've counted. There's like usually 1 to 2 movies every month, except for May. It's usually like 3 superhero movies.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, have you got any take on this?
Yeah, pretty similar again. Except I don't know if I would. I think I would back it up to Batman Begins as being the turning point. Really, I mean,
See, I don't even remember that film when it came out. Like
the thing about Batman Begins, it didn't have it showed people that films could be good, but it wasn't the box office success that of everything that followed it, because it was trying to get over what was it, Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
those films are terrible.
So a lot of people didn't go to see Batman Begins in the theater because it was fighting against that. And then 2 years later, you ended up with the bomb that was Spider-Man 3. But again, that movie was a box office success because it was feeding off of Spider-Man 2 before it. And so there was that stumbling block there, and I think it was like Spider-Man 2 and Batman Begins that showed people that these movies could be good if they were handled the right way. And then Marvel, got their head out of their ass and decided to make their own movies, and knocked it out of the park with Iron Man. So, and that it's those three movies I think showed people what a superhero movie could be. And it's just gotten bigger from there, and it feeds back in on itself, right? So you've got they create the movies, they become popular, and that in turn reflects on comic sales, and then you've got the TV shows, and it's a big cycle, big old bicycle that Marvel's got going on now, and just keeps printing them money.
Yeah. Would you like to see more superhero films with like a complex storyline, so like Watchmen, even The Incredibles?
I think that's what DC is giving us.
Okay.
As far as complex storylines go, which still remains to be seen. We've only the Batman movies were kind of a little complex, and the X-Men movies dealt with the same kind of stuff that Incredibles did. They didn't want heroes around. People don't want the mutants around. I don't know. I think we're getting that stuff. I would like to see more of it, just because I feel like that just is a little more meaty for me to watch. But I don't mind the popcorn stuff.
Yeah, same opinion.
Okay. Do you think they should try and stay away from superhero origin stories?
Yes. In fact, as far as I know, going into Phase 3, Marvel's done with origin stories, even with their slate of heroes that they've announced that have never had a movie. They're all just going to be movies from the standpoint of all these characters have been living in the cinematic universe. So you're not going to see how Doctor Strange became Doctor Strange. You're just going to get to see him being Doctor Strange. There might be brief flashbacks, but it's not going to be like the beginning of the movie, he's not Doctor Strange. And that'll be interesting to see how that works. They showed that they can do it with Daredevil. So I think that's the only character they've been able to do that with so far. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out for them.
I'm of the same opinion there too.
All right. To me, Loki is the perfect anti-hero, but I had a lot of feedback saying that it annoyed a lot of people that Marvel turned the only good villain that they had at the time into an anti-hero in Thor: The Dark World. What do you guys think of that?
I think he's always been an anti-hero.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever. They made him into the villain for sure he comes off as a villain. Even in Thor: The Dark World, I think he was a villain, but I think he's just out trying to do what's best for him or what he wants, which is what I don't know. I'm lost.
Well, his ultimate goal is to be the king of Asgard,
Yeah.
have the power, and have what's best for him. So I mean, even in all of those, like his whole thing in Avengers, he was really trying to get the throne anyway, because he was banished.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really understand what people were really going on about when they said they were like, pissed off that he is now an anti-hero instead of a villain. I mean, I thought he done all right. Well, really, the only reason I watched the films was because of him, because I thought he was a good character. I just loved watching him. I thought he played a really good anti-hero, but a lot of people said back that they're just pissed off that he's no longer like the villain that they wanted him to be. So,
Well, he can still be a villain and an anti-hero. He kind of reminds me of the character Q in Star Trek.
yeah,
He kind of rides that fence, like he's kind of just there doing what's best for him, but he's also like there's a notorious side to him too. So I mean, it depends on what part of the story, which role he plays.
okay, cool.
Yeah, I think he's always out just to serve his best interest. I mean, I don't think Thor 2, I don't think he was an anti-hero. I think that was like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah,
Which is why he helped Thor.
Yeah, so I don't think he's like an anti-hero. He's just like, oh, well, these guys are trying to take my throne. Well, I don't want them to take my throne, so I'm gonna help my my brother here defeat them, and then I'm gonna go back to trying to take the throne.
yeah,
Which he did.
So, again, you're interviewing comic book fans, so
yeah.
that's what you're gonna get.
What are your thoughts on the cast of the Suicide Squad? Who do you like and who don't you like?
I don't know too much about most of them. I know Will Smith, obviously. I know that typically is a white guy there. I could care less. It doesn't matter to me because it's a new interpretation. It's no different than them changing Nick Fury in Iron Man 2 to be Sam Jackson. I'm sure that at some point
that was an alternate comic thing.
Yeah, which I'm sure that was the case. I'm not familiar with the comics, so to me, the last I'd seen of Nick Fury was in the animated Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s.
David Hasselhoff. Got it.
And David Hasselhoff. So I mean, that's what I saw when I saw Nick Fury, and then when I saw Sam Jackson, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I mean, I think in that essence, it gives us a different approach to the character. Again, same thing with the Human Torch, but I like that they're going to have Harley Quinn in there for the first time, having her as a character. They're going to have the Joker in it, obviously. Batman's going to be making a cameo in there at some point. But I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic. I think if done well, it could be like another kind of Guardians of the Galaxy element.
I have to agree. I mean, with the DC stuff, I take most of their announcements with a grain of salt, but I haven't heard any one casting or any one plot rumor or anything like that that's made me go, oh man, I don't want to see that movie. They're just gonna like tank it.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm not overly familiar with DC characters outside of like the Justice League and stuff like that, but I'm familiar with all the characters they've cast and like 90% of the actors they've cast in those roles. So sure, we'll see what they can do.
Okay, cool. I mean, to me, I'm not looking forward to seeing Cara Delevingne make an appearance in it, but that's the only one that I can think of, really. I mean, I think they've done pretty well overall. I mean, well, it'd be interesting to see what Jesse Eisenberg's like playing Lex Luthor. I think that would be pretty interesting, but other than that, I'm not really. I think they've done well casting.
I think the most interesting thing about it is they're willing to do Killer Croc.
Yeah.
That is probably the most interesting thing I've gotten out of all of this.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see. I can't say his name properly for the life of me, so I won't try. But yeah, I think from what films I've seen him in, like The Mummy Returns, it'd be interesting to see him play that role.
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay. Do you think this film will be successful? I know we've just sort of talked about it and with the characters and everything, but you personally, can you see the film being successful?
Yes. Mainly because you're going to get everyone like looking to see. I don't think I think every movie that DC's making right now like is going to make money because every geek that's out there, everyone that's tired of the Marvel stuff is going to tune in to see what DC is bringing differently to the table. And everyone's going to I'm like 90% certain the Joker is in Suicide Squad so that everyone turns up to see what the new Joker's all about.
Yeah.
Like that right there is the license to print money for that movie. Um, whether it'll be good is a completely different thing, but I don't think DC Warner Brothers has anything to worry about making money on any of their upcoming projects.
Okay, cool. Have you got a different perspective, Steve? Or
No.
okay. Do you think there should be better supervillains within these films, or are you pretty chilled out with the villains that are already within the films?
I wish they'd stick around. I think it would just help flesh everything out. Um, I mean, I don't know why they keep killing them off. Um,
Yeah, there's no reason for it really.
the one interesting like fan theory that I've heard with um, like the Marvel stuff is that this is like way out left field stuff, but that Red Skull is actually Thanos.
Oh, really?
That's just like a crazy fan theory.
Oh, okay.
No basis in reality, but the guy just basically backs it up because the last time you see Red Skull, he was dropped in another galaxy
Mm.
from the cosmic cube, and that was like, in the films, what, 60, 70 years ago?
Mhm.
And he's never seen again. So we don't know Thanos' origin. It, I mean, comic book fans know where Thanos comes from, but that doesn't mean it's the exact same thing in the cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Whether Marvel's willing to upset fans that much by not having the exact same thing remains to be seen. But I'm just saying, like, it's a crazy theory, probably because the guy didn't want Red Skull to be dead. But at the same time, you have to look at like most of the villains that would have been around. Like, I mean, the Mandarin was kind of always overshadowing the Iron Man movies,
Mm.
and they kind of one of their one shots they kind of fixed that. Like the Mandarin is still a presence in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Um, Probably won't see him on screen for whatever reason, but uh, dang it, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I don't know if anyone would buy Red Skull still being a threat, 70 years later.
Yeah.
So some things I can see just making sense from the amount of time that has passed and stuff like that, but oh, I don't think that Tony needed to kill all of his villains.
No.
What's your perspective on it, Steve, or is it pretty much the same?
It's pretty much the same. I think that they could do without having to kill off villains every single film.
Okay, cool. Who do you trust more, Joss Whedon or Zack Snyder, to create comic films, obviously?
Dead serious answer, no joke, Zack Snyder.
Oh, really? You're the first person that said that.
I knew I would be, and I'm not saying that just to be contradictory. I don't think Joss Whedon is that great.
Okay.
I'm one of the few people that people so overhyped Avengers, talked it up so much as like the end all be all, the greatest movie like ever made, and it was that way because Joss Whedon made it, that I have no choice but to counter that with I didn't like that movie. Like
Okay.
for me, For me, for me saying I don't like that movie when everyone else is praising it, brings it down to like I like the movie. If that makes any sense to you, like
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
like I can have a legitimate conversation with somebody and be like, yeah, I like the movie, but if that person starts like if that conversation starts with the other person saying that movie was like the greatest superhero movie ever, I have to respond with I didn't like it. Um, and one of the reasons for that is because I don't see how Avengers could have been anything other than what it was.
yeah.
Like every movie in Phase One was leading up to Avengers, hook, line, and sinker. Like there was no way it couldn't have been that. And I think that Marvel could have put anybody in that chair, and it would have turned out more or less exactly the same way. And so to a certain extent, it may have actually looked better than it did because that movie looks like a piece of garbage. Um, but I mean, the only thing Whedon's done that I like is Firefly,
Okay.
and I don't know. I just don't think he's that. I don't think he's amazing. I didn't care for his run on Astonishing X-Men in the comics.
Hmm.
I can't stand most of his any of his TV shows other than Firefly, and I don't think I don't know. I've liked more of Zack Snyder's movies than I've liked of Joss Whedon's, and I think that especially since Zack tackled Watchmen, which nobody thought was doable.
Yeah.
I feel like he just has a more. I think Snyder's more willing to put on screen what the fans want to see, and that to me makes me more excited than anything Whedon would put on screen.
Okay, cool. Steve, do you agree or do you disagree?
I'm kind of on the fence on that because like I'm not a fan of really either one.
Oh, right. I
Um,
haven't heard that one either.
I liked what Whedon did with what he was given as far as Avengers, and I won't know yet on Avengers Age of Ultron until I see it, but um, I don't have any doubts that it'll be good um, to some regard. But again, he's just directing. Like everything's kind of set in place anyway. It's not. I'm not really a director follower. Uh, unless I don't like a mass amount of their films. Snyder, I liked Sucker Punch, and like really the other ones, I haven't seen any of them, but I have no interest in seeing any of them, so I don't know how well they would be either way. Um, in Whedon, him and I think his brother or somebody is doing Agents of Shield. I'm not too thrilled with like a lot of that unless it's around a movie.
Yeah.
And then like a lot of his TV shows, I'm not a fan of any of them. I've watched a few of them here or there, but like it's not enough for me to really get into. The only reason I'm honestly watching Agents of Shield is because Coulson's in it, and that's really the only reason I'm watching that show because it's not really that good, and it kind of calls back to him. But like I said, I'm not a fan of either one, but I think if they're given the right material and depending on their level of enthusiasm, like Snyder just seems more genuine, like he's willing to kind of give the fans kind of that fan service, but also well, I mean, hell, just look at what he and J.J. Abrams have been doing back and forth between Star Wars and Batman vs Superman, just with their random images and everything. So I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence between the two anyway.
Okay.
I'm kind of curious as to who you've been interviewing now. If I'm the first person to say Zack Snyder,
Oh,
you must,
well,
you must be interviewing some
I
diehards.
done a big Google and I was just like, right, I need some comic book diehard fans. And I just typed in like comic book websites and comic book fan websites, stuff like that. So I've literally been interviewing guys that have set up websites like dedicated to comic books sort of thing. And I just asked them, I was like, right, who do you prefer? And they all said just so.
That
So
doesn't
far,
surprise me.
anyway. I mean, I'm still waiting for a number of emails back, but a lot of them have said Joss.
I'm sure if we had other people here from the network, interviewing with you, and I had said that I would be buried and shamed off of this microphone right now. So
That's right. I probably would be too because I don't care for either one.
Well, you're both very interesting to interview because that is first, obviously, that both of you have said the first real answer because everyone's agreed with each other. So I was sort of like, right, okay, I need a bit of diversity here.
Good.
Obviously, there's a rivalry between Marvel and DC. Do you think this puts pressure on them to create new releases before the other one?
I think it pressures them to like. Well, let's be honest. All the releases have been set for the end of the rest of the decade. So now I think it just comes down to like, and it's a win-win for the fans, right? Because we get to see what Marvel's doing, we get to see what DC's doing. But I think what's going to come down to now is casting announcements and like the stuff we've seen. Like, okay, so Marvel's going to announce Spider-Man here. What is Warner Brothers going to counter with? Like, are they going to give us like an image of like the new? Are they going to announce like who's playing Green Lantern? Are we going to get an image of the Flash? Like, that's what it's going to be because. Like I said, the entire slate for these movies is done for the rest of the decade, and now it's just casting and like story announcements and director announcements. Like, so, and that'll be fun to watch unfold. And I think it's just going to be, we get to see them try to top or steal the news cycle from the other guy.
Okay, cool. Do you agree, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you think, obviously, them releasing these films, I wouldn't say a rush to release the films, but obviously definitely competing between each other. Do you think this affects the quality of films being produced and released?
I don't think so. I think Marvel Studios, especially with Disney behind them, is big enough now that they can have multiple movies in production at once. And their schedule is 2 Marvel movies a year. And that's also a task that Disney put on Pixar. They haven't really delivered that yet, but they too. I mean, Pixar has multiple movies going on at once. It's not that studio's not just working on one movie until it's done. They've got like 4 projects going on at once, and Marvel can do that. I mean, and DC, Warner Brothers obviously has the money to do that too. It's not. I mean, it's not. I don't feel like it's the. I think, and I could be wrong, I think you're looking at it the way that like the Twilight movies were made, or Insurgent, or the Insurgent series or Divergent series is being made, where there's one every year and the next one's shot as soon as that last one is done, and they're racing towards that deadline. What we're seeing is these movies they're a movie's announced and it's like 2 years down the road, and then another movie's announced and it's like a year after that one, but it's starting like each movie's getting 2 years. We just don't see it.
Okay.
Rather than, everyone racing towards a release date, although they've locked in release dates now, but you look at how they've placed them out, they're not rushing towards a release date. Like the Divergent series or Saw or like those types of movies.
Okay. Steve, do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, there's just one more question, obviously, because it's getting late. I don't want to keep you guys. What comic hasn't been created into a film you guys would think would bring in the largest profit and would be a film success? Obviously, I know there's loads and loads of comics, but to you, what would be a really interesting film that would bring in a lot of, obviously, revenue for the company and stuff like that? What would you like to see?
The one that jumped into my mind when you asked that question, and this is going to make me look so bad, it's not really a superhero comic, but it's a comic called Sex Criminals.
Called what? Sex Criminals?
Yes.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Haven't heard of it, but
it's actually a really good read. Not sure what your tastes are or anything like that, but it's a really good read. I know it's being made into a TV series for Stars or Showtime, but that for some reason when you said what comic book would you like to see made into a movie, that was the first one that jumped into my mind. Mostly because any other comic that I read or enjoy reading has a movie like franchise already.
Okay, and Steve?
Unfortunately, my answer is going to be very boring. I don't read any comics other than what's already got a franchise established, mostly because they cost so much. So, like for instance, me, it's like Batman. The only thing I could possibly think is Batman Beyond,
Okay.
because it would be a totally different universe. You'd be
Yeah.
in the future. You could have a different Batman and still have Bruce kind of behind the scenes. The way I'd see it almost would be casting like Keaton as the old man Bruce that's in the cave directing the young Batman replacement.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, guys. Sorry to keep you so late, but thank you for all your input. And I'll email you when I release the thing onto my blog.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Okay. Speak
And
to you
I'll
soon.
send you this
Oh yes,
tomorrow morning.
please. Okay, thanks,
Sounds
guys.
good.
Yep.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.